我认为中共的这种自治根本就不是自治。
The rule of patriots in Hong Kong basically means that there is no substantive high degree of autonomy. Basically, under Xi Jinping, a democratic centralism is practiced. They may solicit input from the Hong Kong government, but once Beijing makes a decision, the SAR government has to implement it.
香港现在的情况是，他们可以参与政府事务，可是如果北京做出了一个决定，那么他们很多时候也并没有办法。
And they believe that one of the major problems, this goes back to 2007, when Hu Jintao told the Hong Kong government on the 10th anniversary that the SAR government had to create a new generation of Hong Kongers who loved one country, two systems, who loved China.
他们需要去制造这样一个新一代的香港人，这样新一代的一个热爱一国两制、热爱中国的一代香港人。
This also touches on Xi Jinping's Chinese Communist identity politics, which is
这也
attempting to
与习近
rehabilitate
平
the spoiled image of the Communist Party and the spoiled image of being a communist. This is why we start seeing laws protecting the national anthem, martyrs and so forth like this.
我们在
So in Hong Kong, which has always been
香港
historically
开始看到一
anti-communist
些
to a large degree,
保护国
there is
旗、
this
保
effort
护国
related
歌
to
的
the
法
extradition
律。
campaign to eradicate so-called anti-communist sentiment and anti-communist forces.
他们试图
With regards to autonomy,
消除一切反共的
and the Greater Bay Area initiatives are
行
key
为
to
和
China's development program
情
right
绪
now, and because the central government believes that the major impediment to Hong Kong signing on and strongly supporting these programs has been the two systems, has been its democracy, has been its freedoms. It is now looking to restrict those in order to force the SAR government to support these programs. So once again, in closing, I would say there is no substantive autonomy. Thank you.
我认为在香港现在并没有实质的自治。
Thank you, Mr. Swazi.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Chairman Rubio, for holding this hearing. We appreciate you bringing this together. Thank you, Chairman Representative Smith, Ranking Member Smith, for the work that you've done on this issue for so many years. Thank you to the witnesses. We are so grateful to all of you for the information you've given us here today and for shining a light on this. I know we sit here in this chamber. It's very calm. It's very safe. It's
我
very
们坐在
sterile.
这样一个
And
非
you
常
bring to
宁
life
静的
what's going on in real people's lives right now. When you talk about a 12-year-old being
房间
arrested,
中，
we hear the
你
idea
们
that someone
让
gets
我们
pepper
知道
sprayed, sprayed
在
into
香
their
港究竟
wound,
发
and
生
hear
着什
about
么，
people's
如
heads
12
being
岁
smashed
的
into
抗争
the
者
concrete and getting
被
concussions, and we
拘
hear about
捕
the，rubber bullets and the tear
然后
gas
警
and
察
everything else.
向
And
已
people
经
living
受
in
伤
fear on a
的
regular basis
抗
for
争者的
standing
伤
up
口上
for
喷
speaking
胡
their
椒
minds.
喷雾
Here in the
这
United
样的
States
事
of
情。
America, we've believed since Nixon went to China that the more that
从尼克森访
China
华
was
开始，
exposed to our way of life in the United States and to the West, that they would
我
become
们
more like us. We always thought they'd become, if they saw
我们
capitalism,
一
they
直以
saw
为我们
democracy,
通过
sooner or
和
later they'd become
中
more
国
and
的
more
中共的
like
这
us.
种
And we
交
now
流，能
know
让
that
他们
that's
逐
not
渐
at all
的
the case.
认同我们的
Whether the
价
hearings
值。
we've held about the Uyghurs,
可
the
是
hearings about Tibet,
我们现在
or
举
now
办
about
关
Hong
于
Kong,
新
we
疆
know that、
西
they're
藏、
we
香港
talk
的
about
听证，
Hong Kong as being one country, two systems. It's really one world with two models, and they're
我
meeting
们说
each
香
other
港
in
是
Hong
一
Kong
国
right
两
now.
制，
And the question is which model is going to win? Is it going to be the model that we
也就是说有
promote
两
here in
种
the
不
United
同
States
的
with the rule of law,
模
with
式
freedom of expression,
那么香港
and with
究竟
democracy,
会走
or is
向
it
哪
going
一
to
个
be
模式？到底
authoritarianism
是像
and-
美国
and
一样有
the-
法治、有
the-
自由，
the
还是说
powerful
走向
forces
一
of the
个
government doing whatever they
专
want,
制
whatever
和
they
集
want.
权的
They're
这样
meeting
一
right
个
there,
模
and
式
you're？ right in the middle of that challenge
你
right now.
们
So
现
we're so
在
grateful to all of
正
you.
站在这
So
一
I'm
个挑战
concerned
的正中间
about。the timing of things right now.
我想
You know,
讨论一下
we're
时
pushing
间的
to
问题，
get this
实际的问
bill
题。
passed here in the Congress. But right now we've got, I think you talked about it, Joshua, the National Day in
我
China
想
is coming up on
黄
October
之锋，你
1st.
谈到
I'm concerned
10月
about
1
what
日中共的
Mainland
这个
China's actions are going to be in relation to that, and whether there'll be more violence will result as they try to flex their authority. And
我想
I'd
问
like
你
to hear each of you talk about that. And the second thing I'm concerned about are the local elections coming up in
当
November.
香港的选
And
举
I want to hear about
11
from
月
you
就要开始
about
了，
the
我想 了解一下，你们是否相信在这里会有一个机会让香港人去表达他们的诉求？还是说中共有可能会，中共可能会反对一些香港的民主派议员选举，阻挠一些香港的民主派议员选举
？And mainland China said, we're going to support the idea of there being elections in the future in Hong Kong for the leader, instead of Carrie Lam being appointed, it'd be an election by the people. That couldn't happen right away. It would take some time. I'd like to hear what you think about the timing. So let's try.
有些人在说香港可能以后会有民主自由，可是这需要一些时间。你们怎么看这样的一种说法？
How impactful that can be, and what the timing would be if they were to agree as one of the 5 demands that there would be.
你们认为他们什么时候会同意你们的5大诉求？
Apart from troops were already moved to the border a few weeks ago. That's the tactics for Beijing authorities to generate the chilling effect. We're strongly aware of how Carrie Lam, the leader of Hong Kong, openly declared that she is considering to impose emergency ordinance in Hong Kong to
然后
stop the
港府也
protests.
在考虑是否要对香港实行紧急 法。
Chief Executive of Hong Kong to shut down the internet, cut the public transport, and
那
even
么
cut the
林
air
郑月
traffic.
娥
We all know
在
that
这样的紧
political
急法
crisis must
下，
solve
它
by
可
political
以
system reform.
关闭
That's the reason we
公
urge
共
Beijing
交通，它
not
可
to
以
handpick
关掉
the
网
leader.
络。
Please let us enjoy the right of free election. But they just conduct and consider to use this kind of martial law before or after the Chinese National Day. I think that's the reason not only people defense on human rights must care about, even businessmen that focus on enjoying economic freedom and open business environment. They should be aware of how Hong Kong is not only on the brink of bloodshed, it's also under the threat of those martial law and white terror.
他们的利益也将在这样的紧急法下受到侵害，所以我希望美国国会尽快通过香港人权与民主法案。香港的选举将在11月24号举行。我们认为北京将继续采用比较强硬的政策，禁止一些年轻的泛民主派议员进行选举。同时，我会在本月底或者是10月初，公布我自己是否会考虑参加选举。
Dynamic could change because of the protests that are going on.
In District Council, we have 452 seats, and more than 75% of the seats are almost dominated by pro-Beijing camp. And on 24th of November, we hope pro-democratic camp can get a good turnout to show the power of people.
今年的选举，泛民主派能够获得比较大的胜利，来表达民众的诉求。
And what is happening from the people, and it could be a flashpoint. We have to be very conscious of that. Denise, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, personally, I don't feel that October 1st would be something to stop the people from going on to the streets, as the sentiment is still very determined and very strong.
我并不认为10月1号这种中共的国庆日会停止，会令香港人停止走上街头。香港人的抗争已经变得越来越有创意，越来越灵活。我们希望。除非港府能够诚恳的、真正的，给我们一个答案，香港的抗争者是不会离开、不会退却的。
I don't think, no, personally, I feel that there are probably already Chinese police among the Hong Kong police.
现在我个人认为，香港的警察队伍中已经有了中共的警察。因为我们已经听到他们在他们的 他们之间开始讲普通话而不是粤语。
This sort of infiltration of the Chinese police into the Hong Kong police force. So,
Are you concerned about it escalating around National Day?
你担心10月1号这种
already
抗
on a
争的
daily
程
basis
度
of this
或者
sort
冲
of
突的程度
escalation
会
where
加剧
the
吗？
police are
我
patrolling
每
the
天都
streets,
在
people are
担
arrested,
心这种
you know,
冲突的
just
加
for
剧。
being young, really. So I
警
think
察
we
每天
are
都在
already
巡
at
逻
that
大街，
stage.
很多年
And
轻人
so,
被捕，只是因为他们
no, that
很
is
年
why
轻。
we call for the U.S.
看起来像是
Congress and
抗争者。
also international communities to monitor this regime.
所以我们也希望国际社会能够密切地关注这个政权，这个习近平政权的做法。我们在保护我们所相信的这些价值，这些普世价值。
Thank you. Sunny?
Wait, thank you for your question. Personally, I think on
就我个人而
the
言，
National Day,
我
actually
认为国
there
庆
will be
日
more
这一
escalation
天，
on the movement, and because
反
I
逃犯这个
know that the
香
Chinese
港的抗争运
authority
动
must
可能
want
会
the Hong
加
Kong people
剧。
try to respect the National Day, but on the other hand, Hong Kong
尽
protesters
管
they
中
know
共当
that
局
they also know that
希望
it's
抗争者
important to have some
能够
symbolic
尊
movement
重
on the National
这
Day,
个所谓
and
的国
that's
庆
why
日，可
there
是
will be
抗
some
争者也
escalation
懂
of the
得他们
movement.
需要一
But
些象征
I
性的行为。
doubt if the Chinese
具有
government
象
they
征意义
dare
的
to
行
use
为。
the emergency law or send out the PLA to come to Hong Kong, because currently China relies on Hong Kong very much.
我
Many foreign investment
认为现
from
在
China
中共非常的
are still
依赖
coming from
香
Hong
港，
Kong,
很
and
多
that's
的
why
外国
once
投
if
资
they
是
deploy
从
the
香港
PLA or try to
进
use
入
the
的。
emergency law to crack down
如
on
果
Hong
他
Kong
们
protester, I
试
think this
图
is
动
not
用
very
紧急
promising
法
for Hong Kong people
来
and
镇压
for
香港的
the
抗争
Beijing
的
government,
话，
and Beijing
我认为
government will not do something like that, I feel.
我认为北京当局不
Sharon,
会
if you
这
could
样
talk
做
about the elections，
不
a
会
little bit
不会
also.
采用军队镇压的做法。
I think a couple of things I want is really important that hasn't been raised. In addition to the question of infiltration and use of
关
decoys,
于
last August 2018, the
这种
People's Daily announced the
入侵
establishment of the
去
Greater
年
Bay
的
Area Police Cooperation Mechanism among Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau.
中共
Related
宣
to
布
and
了
part
这
of
样一
this
种
mechanism, the
香港、
Guangdong
广
Public
东
Security
和
Department
澳门警
conducted
察的一种
training
合
of
作。
key Hong Kong police personnel in Guangdong. This has been followed up on. And one of the questions I think is
他们
important to press
邀
either
请了一
through
些
the
关键
UN
的香港
systems
的
is to raise the
警队
question
人
of
员
really what
到
kind
广
of
东
training. I am pretty sure that
参
the
加
training
培
did not
训。
include
我想
international standards on
说
appropriate use，
我
of
认为
force,
这样的培训
and
一定不
the
包括
special
如何正确
procedures
的使
of the
用武
UN
力
special。experts just last week issued a
根据
joint statement about concern and also raising these questions of the need to make the police, the Hong Kong police, there are very sophisticated, detailed standards on the use of force, and that you're supposed to de-escalate, not escalate, you're supposed to reduce harm, not create harm, and that there is a whole
像
range
警
of
察
police
的
crowd
作
control
用
mechanisms,
应
and
该
they're supposed to
是
choose
试
according to
图
proportionality.
停
So I
止
wanted
暴力，
to
而不
just
是增
emphasize
加
that.
暴力。
On the timing of National Day, I think we can't lose
在
sight of
国
the
庆日
fact
这一
that
天
Xi Jinping is not as powerful as we may think or as he would like
我
us
想
to
说
think. And
习近
that
平
it is
并
true
不
that with the
像
consolidation of
他
power,
希望我们
etc.,
想象的
etc.,
他那样
and
的
his
强大。
no-term limit now both of the key positions. The fact is, what you're getting to see, the tea leaves, if you look a little more closely, is that the party leaders inside are not happy with the way that Xi Jinping has, quote, handled the Hong Kong situation. And how do we know this? We know
中共
this
党内
because
的一些人不同意习
Carrie
近
Lam,
平
the
对于
chief
香港的做
executive,
法
on。
我
Monday, I
们为什么
believe,
知
said,
道这一点？
no,
因
no,
为
no, no withdrawal, no, 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 etc., etc. I withdrew it, no formal. 2 days later,
林郑
that
月娥一
kind
直
of
在
disingenuous explanation, I have heard the Hong Kong people. For
一
goodness
直
sakes,
坚
it's
持
been 3
说
months. If you
他
can't hear 2 million, 3 million
拒
people,
绝撤回
why
逃
in
犯
2
条
days
例
did she suddenly
可是
say,
他在
I will now formally? So
2天之后突然
Xi
就
Jinping is
正式
actually in
的
a
撤回了
lose-lose
逃犯条
situation.
例
It's。a no-win situation. He's stuck between the hardliners, who I am pretty much concerned about, are pushing for military force, because he has already shown he's failed. Deng Xiaoping took 2 months, shut down the whole 89 student and the democracy and free trade union movement. We are now in the third month, so under the party's dead time frame on how you can handle these mass disputes, he has failed. So he's in a
习近平在香港问题上已经失败了。
October 1st. This is not any anniversary. This is the 70th anniversary. So they have invested a year's worth of enormous investment in film festival, special documentaries. They have said that no Chinese documentaries in the Chinese TV recently. They have to show the history, etc. There's an enormous amount of investment to keep the legitimacy and have a wonderful birthday celebration for the country. So he's stuck.
通过这种巨大的投资来证明其政权的合法性。
And the others who are saying there's got to be a way to handle this, not the way you're doing it, because now we look terrible. Now we look like the thugs we are. And so I think that is what we should be monitoring are the messages. And just last week, a very strange editorial appeared in Future, which is one of the major party organs. And in Future, the editorial pointed out something very strange. It said, whether a country's political, this is our translation, sorry, whether a country's political system is democratic and effective, one needs to mainly look at whether the country's leadership ranks can rotate or alternate, BNT, in accordance with the law in an orderly fashion. What does this mean? We don't know, because just the fact that the Constitution eliminated the term limits for the top office doesn't mean he'll stay. So I think there are some other wild cards that are on the table that we need to keep an eye on in terms of how the U.S. government can think about the options and policy options. Of course, we support the legislative initiatives. This is very important, but I think there's something much bigger underway in terms of the politics in Beijing that will absolutely have an impact on the
北
decisions
京
that will be
有一些
made
更深层的原
pre-October
因，
1st and after.
非常的值得我们
Thank you.
的
Dan, I've taken
探
up too
究
much。time. I'm going to move on to.
We'll let Dan.
You want to let Dan go?
All right. Why don't we hold and we'll go to Senator Young.
I just have a statement to make, and I regret I'm going to have to leave after this, but I wanted to say thank you, Mr. Wong. Thank
我
you,
可能
Ms. Ho,
将
for
很
your
快离开，可
courage,
是我
for
想
your
说，
resolve,
非
for
常
your
感谢
leadership
你
in the face
黄
of
志峰也非常
great
感谢
trial
你
and
和律师
tribulation.
感谢你们的勇
Thank
气
you，for the example you are setting
感
for
谢
the world
你
and
们
for all that you're
为
doing
世
for
界做出的这样的一
freedom
个
loving
范
peoples.
例
I
榜
want to send a
样。
message to Beijing's communists. And my message is you cannot have it both ways. You cannot seek to trade with the wealthy
就是说，
nations
你们
of
不
the
能
world and
两
rip off our
两头都
intellectual
占，
property.
你们
You
不能
cannot
一
seek
边
to be a trusted international development partner and engage in predatory economic practices through your Belt and Road
不能
Initiative.
在一边专政的
And
同
you
时，一边又
cannot
在利用
reap
着自
all
由
the
贸易。
economic benefits that you enjoy under American law of Hong Kong
你们
special status
不能
while
利用
undermining
美国法律
your
对于
rights as
给予香港的这种优
while
惠待遇，
eradicating your political
同时
identity. We cannot
又
allow
在
this to happen.
香港
So
实
I
施
look
这样
forward to
的
working with
政
you.
治镇
I
压。
will be signing on to the legislation
我
offered
想
by
说
the，co-chairman
我
of
会
this committee
签，
as you
我
have
会
encouraged us to
支
do
持
so.
这
And
两
I'll
个
be
法
seeking
案。
other opportunities,
同
perhaps
时
in
我
the
也会
immigration area, to
在
provide
比如说
further
移民
relief
方案
to Hong
看
Kongers
如何能
who
够
do not want to be
更
a
好的帮
part
助香港人，
of this predatory
看去帮助那些不想成为
regime that calls
这
itself
个
communist, but in fact is
专制政
really
权
fascist
体制下
in many
的人的
respects.
香港，我想去帮助这些香港
And we
人。
must continue to press it to change its behavior. Thank you so much for your presence
我
here.
们需要继续坚持让中共改变他们的做法。
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is no disputing the fact that under Xi Jinping, human rights abuses have seriously worsened. You named
在习
the
近平
area
统治下，
from
中国的人
torture,
权状
religious
况、
freedom. Ms. Holm, you talked about
宗
the
教自由状
civilization
况
of
都恶化
religions where every single
很多
religion or
宗
faith,
教
including the Falun Gong,
包括
Christians,
法轮
Tibetan
功
Buddhists, the Uyghurs, all
西
have to
藏
comport to
都
the
受到了迫
communist
害，
model or else face severe torture, incarceration, and even
都
death.
受到了酷刑折
It
磨
is incredible
以及
what
关
he
押
is doing and his regime,
中共政权的这种做法非常的令人难以置信。
On human trafficking, the Trump administration has designated China as a Tier 3 country because of sex and labor trafficking.
人口贩卖这个问题上，川普政府已经点出了中共。
Xi Jinping is bringing dishonor to himself and to his government with his abuse of people. And I think we need to say that loud and clear. You know, the great father of democracy, Wei Jingsheng, once said, and I had him at a hearing, and I actually met him in Beijing when he was let out briefly to get Olympics 2000, which the Chinese government didn't get. So they rearrested him and beat him almost senseless. Well, he said, you know, you Westerners don't get it. You do coddle dictatorship. You do allow and enable by your weakness. You gotta look a dictatorship in the eye and say, we're not kidding. Conditionality of human rights either occurs or we're not going to be trading with you and allowing you to use that economic power that you get to further incarcerate and further repress. You know, the lessons of the Soviet Union were not learned when it came to China. I got elected in 1981. My first trip was to Moscow and Leningrad.
我们好像都没有学到，都没有利用这些教训，都没有利用好这些教训在处理中国的问题。
And said human rights matter.
人权是非常重要的。
Thankfully, we saw a change. Of course, under Putin, it's still bad, but not as bad as it was during those years.
尽管俄罗斯现在在普京的统治下，人权非常的状况非常不好，可是也不像在苏联时期那样。可是我们在中国这个问题上，我们没有学到我们的教训。
Not only did I vote for it, but we had a world coalition saying this egregious behavior will not be tolerated. Therefore, we're going to hold you to account and no longer provide munitions, which Mr. McGovern's bill, which I've co-sponsored, would seek to do with the police. That was Section 317, I believe, of that bill. And Mr. Garrett, you might want to speak to that. But we've got to be serious about all of this. And I just bring this up because it deeply concerns me that we just keep not learning the lessons. Nancy Pelosi, Frank Wolf, David Bonnier, and I all opposed MFN for China after Tiananmen Square. George Herbert Walker Bush thought he could manage the whole thing. He was our ambassador to China. And as it turned out, we managed it extraordinarily poorly. Bill Clinton came in and he said, let's link human rights with MFN trade. 1 year later,
中共采取强硬的政策，可是当时的总统布什并不这样想。现在我已经5年来，我一直在不停的努力，试图通过这场法律。然后还是有人说，我们只是需要与中共进行更多的贸易往来，他们的人权状况会自然的就变好。可是香港已经失去了，香港人已经付出了如此大的代价，失去了，逐渐的失去他们的自由。
We're going to put conditionality on this. So if you want to speak to that, I would appreciate it. There have been 1,000 arrests since the activities occurred.
从运动开始，已经有1000多人被抓捕。我想了解一下现在他们的现状是如何的。这些警察他们是刚刚被雇佣的吗？他们是更加亲共的吗？所以他们才会变得这样更加具有压迫性吗？
With more than 1,500 Hong Kong were arrested in the past 3 months. More than 200 of them were prosecuted already. I'm among one of them, and we're also aware of some of those activists were already detained inside prison before any trial start. And that's the sugar-coated rule of law and the Hong Kong-style legal system under the pressure of Beijing. I've been arrested and prosecuted with the charges of unauthorized assembly. Even I've experienced to be jailed for around 120 days, but the price I pay is just a small piece of cake. Because lots of our teammates, from my understanding, more than 100 of them face the riot charges might be locked up in prison for more than 10 years. 5 years ago, during the umbrella movement, we were just arrested by an unlawful assembly to face maybe months or 1 to 2 years in jail. But now, youngsters at the age of 15, they should enjoy their summer holiday. They should spend the
现在
time, more
15岁
time
左右这些
in
年
the
轻人
summer
本来
vacation
应
with
该
their friends
去
and
享受
family.
他们的
But
暑
now they are
假
the， one
去和
being
家人和
prosecuted
朋友在一
and
起。可是
need to
他们
face a
现在却
trial
在被政
and
府
maybe
起
from
诉，
15 or 16
甚
at the
至
age
将
the
面
golden
临
year
在这样一个黄
for
金的年
themselves
龄，
might be already need to be
将要
locked up
面
in
临
prison.
监禁这
And
样的危
also we
险。
have activists Edward Leung
同
who
时，
fight
我
for
们也有
Hong
一
Kong's
些
freedom.
抗议人
Already being
士
locked up in prison needs to face 6 years in prison.
也
Apart
面
from
临
the
着
massive
6年的监禁。
arrest
这样
and
的刑罚。
prosecution, it seems to be the tactics for Beijing to silence our voice. But
这
with
是
how our
这
movement
是
still keep
北
our
京
momentum,
试图
just like 2 weeks ago,
压
more
迫
than
我们声音的一种
200,000
做
Hong
法。
Kongers marched towards U.S. consulate in Hong Kong, urged to pass the
所
bill
以前
and
一
to show the
阵我
global
们
solidarity.
很多的抗争
We're
者
also aware that the cabinet
在
of chief
美国
executive,
驻港
which means
的
member from the executive council,
驻港机构
last
附
week
近游
openly
行。
declared that Hong Kong's chief executive enjoy the right to appoint any secret police. Secret police is not the terms created by activists or created by
香
journalists.
港的林郑
It
月
is
娥有
the
权
terms
指
written
派
in the
秘密
current
警
ordinance
察。
and regulation. It could authorize the power for Hong Kong chief executive to appoint anyone,
他
no matter
允
they
许
live in Hong
香
Kong,
港的
they live in
特
mainland,
首
or live in
委派
or they have
任何
within
人，
any
无
kind
论
of
是香港
background.
人
They can
还
be
是
appointed to be the Hong Kong
大陆
police force
人
and continue to use life-threatening
作
force
为
to
警
crack
队的一
down
部
on our
分。
protests. And that's the white terror and why all of us will describe
这就是
Hong
香
Kong
港
as
的
a police
现
state.
在的白色恐怖统治。
I would like to add to the fact that among those who have been arrested and charged for
我想
riot,
说，目
a lot of
前
them
以暴
have
动
been
罪被起
on the
诉
sides,
或被
but
拘捕
they
的一
have
些
not
人，
been in the front lines. They were just
很多人他们
near
根本就
the front
不
lines,
是
and
站在
some of
前线的
them
这些
have
人，他们
been
只是
first
恰巧
aiders
站
who
在
have
附
been
近
helping other，
有一些
people
是急
getting
救
up
人
and
员
getting away，from
有
the
一些
sites,
是在
social
帮助
workers and of
人
course the legislators
帮助
who have
抗争
been
者的人，有一
arrested.
些是 社工。
They were not charged for
他们
riot, but that is something that is shocking to the Hong Kong people to have
所以这种
these
是对香
legislators
港人来说
arrested.，
对
And
这
so,
种
on top
港
of
府的
that,
做
I
法
would
非
like
常的
to
震
add
惊。
that the situation that is in Hong
我
Kong, it is
还想说，香港的形势
spreading into the international world,
正
where
在
this
扩展到
communist
世界各
tactic
地。
of silencing people with fear
香
and also with
中共
money,
这种通过
it's
钱、通
everywhere
过
really. It's not only in Hong Kong.
晋
As
升
I said just
来
now,
压迫反抗声音的
there
做法，
have
已
been
经
incidents in
输出到了
Australia where
全世
the
界。比如说
government
在
of
澳洲，
institutions, they have,
如一个政府机构，他们
kept away from me and
试
another
图
Chinese artists
试图
for fear of being associated
防
with
止
us.
我
And
进
also in
试图
Canada, where
断
Hong
绝与
Kong
我的联
activists
系
have been banned
如
from
在
the gay
加拿
pride,
大
because
香
of
港的
security
一
concerns,
位
so they say.
活动者
And
也
so
被禁止
the
参加一个
fact
游
that
行。
is the communist government, they use this sort of the money where
他们中共试图用
brands
钱
and businesses, they
用
would be
商
adding
业
this sort of suppression onto
来
their employees and
将
other
这
people,
种压
and then
迫
everyone
输
would
出
be
到
just silencing themselves.
输出到
So,
商界，然后输出到
this
雇员的
also would
输出到
cause
雇
is
主的头
causing a
上，然
lot
后
of
雇主
fear
再
among
输出到
Hong
雇员的
Kongers,
头上
and。That is why this movement has been largely anonymous.
这也就是为什么我们这场抗争运动，大部分人都是无名的运动，他们不会说出自己的名字，因为不想被以暴动和非法集会的罪名被起诉。
what Denise has just mentioned about the problematic law. Actually, the Human Rights Council of the United Nations has decried the public order ordinance, which is a colonial law in Hong Kong. The Department of Justice and police force in Hong Kong, they can use this public order ordinance to prosecute those protesters with a very easy way. That means that once if the DOJ, the Department of Justice, or the police force, they try to use the public order ordinance to prosecute the protester, and then actually it's very difficult for them to be not sued as guilty. And that's why this law should be abolished by the government
的司法部门可以利用这样一条香港现存的法律去起诉这些活动者，而且他们很难被判无罪，所以我认为这条法律应该被废除。我认识一个小朋友，一位年轻人，他在抗争中被拘捕。当这个年轻人被逮捕的时候，他立刻就向这个警察。他很快就问这个警察说：“我可不可以打电话给我的律师？”然后这个警察就告诉他说：“你不可以打电话给你的律师，因为我想要折磨你，因为我想要让你受苦。”然后这个警察对一个非常非常年轻的年轻人说这样一句话。这也就是为什么香港人对警察的行为如此的愤怒，如此的沮丧。
The prosecutions is related to not only the imposition of the public order, but ordinance. It has to be an unlawful assembly. So the way in which the notice of no objection process contributes to that, that's the tool. And the tool is Hong Kongers then face this ridiculous situation where they have to have the police deny the application for a notice of no objection for a file for a peaceful assembly
尽管他们试图进行
反
抗警方暴力的和平集会，可是警方会拒绝批准这样的集会。
So that's really important that through this kind of misuse of that process, they are really violating international standards for peaceful assembly by imposing this kind of unduly restrictive administrative procedure. The police, under this procedure, then can act rampantly as both enforcement, prosecutor.
所以他们在拒绝批准这样的集会了之后，他们就可以使用武力来驱散人群。
So right now, the police are acting as enforcement, prosecution, and executioner of orders, and that is part of the problem with looking at when we talk about and on top of that, we have politicized decision making by the prosecution. This was also noted by independent UN experts maybe 2 years ago, saying that they were concerned about a potential pattern of politicized
联合国的一些专家在几年前就已经发出这样的
There is an issue regarding whether or not Hong Kongers can get a fair trial.
现在香港人是否能够得到公平的一个司法程序，是值得讨论的一个问题。不论是中共的一些官媒。
So when the Chinese regime characterized demonstrators as separatist, extremist, terrorists. This is already setting an expectation for the Hong Kong judiciary to act, not just as law enforcement, not only in the charges that they decide to lay against a protester, but also the sentences that they're trying to get after people. The pro-Beijing United Front movement in Hong Kong has been very aggressive in attacking judges that it feels
在香港的一些亲共者一直在攻击那些在攻击那些同情抗议者的法官，或者是没有给抗议者非常高的刑罚的法官。这是一个很大的问题。
There's an expectation that Hong Kong judges have to uphold the national security of the Communist Party. So if you render a decision that's inconsistent with that national security expectation, you may be vulnerable to disqualification. Now, this has not happened But this is the logic that is being used to disqualify candidates at the district council, the legislative council elections, and so forth. Regarding the police, touching on Sharon's comments earlier, the Hong Kong police also went to Xinjiang as observers to learn on how they handled
香港的警队也被中共邀请到了新疆去观摩。
There was some interaction with them. The Hong Kong PLA garrison commander observed some of their passing out their parades and so forth like that. But one of the most dangerous and I think terrifying things for most Hong Kongers is that
令人担心的一件事情是，香港的警察现在他们不穿警服，他们不带警员证，你很有可能在街上被拘捕，你在家中被拘捕，没有人知道这个警察是谁，你也不知道这个警察他到底是不是香港警察，还是说来自中国大陆的一些绑架者。也就是，所以我认为这一点对香港的法治非常的具有危害性。他们现在想做什么就可以做什么。香港警察曾经被视为。
Senator King.
Mr. Chairman, Representative McAdams was here long before I arrived, so I'll defer to him.
Mr. McMahon, yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator. Today marks a significant day in United States history. It was 232 years ago on this very day that our forefathers signed the United States Constitution. So it's, I think, with some significance that we welcome you here today to the United States Congress, the House and the Senate, to share your testimonies and as you share in this struggle, this global struggle of humanity for freedom and independence. So that Constitution signed 232 years ago today created a federal system, one with a Senate and a House that oftentimes, by design, there's some tension between these two bodies. It created three branches of government: an executive branch, a legislative branch, and a judicial branch. It's an outgrowth of that system. Is our two political parties that oftentimes also struggle for our ideas to move forward. It created a system of a federal system with now 50 states that also.
我们50个州的联邦体系。
There's a healthy tension, sometimes unhealthy, but there's a tension between that system as we struggle to move forward ideas and the rule of law. One thing that I think is important to note, though, is that we all stand together. This is a legislative and executive branch that we stand together, Republicans and Democrats, in support of the struggle for human rights, for the rule of law, and for freedom for Hong Kong. And I would echo the sentiments that have been expressed earlier, that we cannot have it both ways. We cannot have a rule of law and human rights and the struggle for freedom with the actions that we see that are undermining the very nature of that system in Hong Kong today. And so it's incredibly troubling to me to see what we have seen play out over the last 6 months. And forecasting into the future some of the efforts to undermine the sanctuaries of democracy and human rights that we see right now. So some of those sanctuaries and foundations of freedom, as we've seen in the United States and we also see in Hong Kong, the freedom of democracy and government through elections, the freedom of academia and for ideas to thrive in an academic system, the economic freedom for individuals and economic competition, and rule of law where every individual is treated fairly and equally under the law, and human rights are protected. So my concern, what I'd love for you to comment on, is where we go from here, and with some very troubling signs on the horizon. So I'd like you to comment on Mr. Wong. And let me commend all of you who are examples and the founders of freedom, whose names I hope will be remembered 232 years from now in the struggle for freedom in Hong Kong. But Mr. Wong, Ms. Ho, Mr. Chung, and Ms. Hom for your efforts and struggles for Hong Kong. I'd love for you to comment on, first of all, Mr. Wong, the struggle in elections for individuals to step forward. Over the last several years, the government, as you referenced, has repeatedly rejected the nomination of candidates running for political office who have supported or been affiliated with self-determination. What challenges does that impose today and going forward for individuals who are willing to put themselves and their names forward? Taking that same look at the foundations of freedom of thought to academia, what support our academic institutions give to students as they raise their voices in support of intellectual freedom and human rights, and also to the economy and free economy as businesses. Ms. Ho, I believe, as you spoke about some of the concerns with Cathay Pacific and efforts that undermine individuality and freedom of thought in the marketplace of ideas in the workplace. What is happening in these respective spheres and foundations of democracy, and how can we best support freedom of thought?
So, just let me explain what's on the mind of the young generation. In the past few years after the end of umbrella movement, lots of youngsters, no matter they uphold different kind of political belief, they still have the awareness and consensus. They hope their voice can be heard inside this institution. Apart from talk to the street, joining protests, it's also significant for us for push forward political system and election reform. Unfortunately, with those political censorship, even I'm considering to run for office, and I will make the formal announcement on late of September or early October. I'm still aware that how Beijing hopes to bar the whole generation of youngsters to enter the institution. But it's lucky that with the determination and courage of Hong Kongers, they just turned the whole generation of youngsters to be dissident. And not only the generation of baby boomers, even the generation of Gen X and millennials, all they joined the fight with solidarity and unity. So I would just make it clear, Hong Kong is not only suffering from the political crisis, we are also suffering from the humanitarian crisis, especially how Hong Kong police force just hardline suppress on us. No matter the sexual harassment experienced by young lady arrested, or how injured protester would be pulled down from the ambulance by riot police directly, or how arrested person is really difficult for them and being refused to contact lawyer or even seek for any kind of medical treatment. I think this kind of hardline suppression would just turn whole of my generation and the generation younger than me, no matter on the street or get inside the institution, we will keep on together with this uphill battle, and we hope the U.S. Congress can stand with Hong Kong.
我们会继续坚持这一场非常困难的战斗。我们希望美国的国会也给予我们支持。
I'll go. So yes, on the cultural side, and also on the freedom of thought side of things, it has been 90% of it probably has been eroded, where at least the whole
自由已经受到了侵害，至少在娱乐界，娱乐界已经完全在中共的统治下了。包括我在内的一小部分包括我在内的一小部分艺人已经对这个事件提出了抗议，可是有很多的这个香港的艺人在社交媒体上支持香港政府，支持香港警察，他们不得不宣布他们对中共的这样的支持，否则的话他们就将受到审查，他们就将受到中共的迫害。所以我想商界他们当然就是商业界也有遇到非常大的这种压力，比如港铁，他们关闭了一些地铁站，他们在抗争期间关闭了一些地铁站，这样的话，警察就会非常容易的可以去逮捕一些抗争者。
I believe it was an article that was in the People's Daily, the state
我想这一点是由人民日报的一个文章引起的。
helping the people. So I do think that in a free society, these businesses and corporations, they do have a obligation, a social responsibility to keep up this kind of integrity, to at least to safeguard our freedoms, which they have failed to do so.
在一个自由社会中，这些机构本应该去保障我们的自由，可是他们并没有做到。现在我们对这种问题并没有太多的解决办法，除了抗争之外。这些商界的人，他们在将他们受到的这种压力再一次压到这个香港人民的身上。我希望，比如说，如果能够去制裁香港这些迫害人权的官员，我希望这种情况将会至少获得关注。
From the academic perspective, I believe we still need to have a correct understanding on China first. Because in 1989, when Professor Fukuyama famously declared that this is the end of the history because he believed democracy is the ultimate form of human government, and all the ideology, communism or other authoritarianism will have no place in the coming world. But apparently, 2 decades after he gave his speech, he's wrong, and we cannot still using the mindset of the old times that we should continue the engagement policy towards China. We should abandon the engagement policy and try to use a more assertive way, try to understand China. Because in the campus, we know that Chinese government, they try to establish a lot of Confucius Institute around the world. And by that Confucius Institute, they are creating propaganda, try to influence the youth in other countries, including your kids. And this is not reasonable. Canada government last year, they started to shut down some of the Confucius Institutes.
现在有些海外政府已经采取了一些措施去关闭这样一些孔子学院，因为我支持他们这样做法，因为这是在维护学术自由。那么中共肯定是不同意这一点的。香港人在过去几个月之内
across the globe, in Australia, in UK, in US, they have received a lot of threatening letters and
我们在过去也受到了很多学术界的支持，包括海内外。
And that's why we need all the free countries, including US, to
这就是我们为什么需要所有的自由国家来支持香港，
to support the academic freedom in the long run.
去支持香港的学术自由。
I think the question that all of this also is related to is China's clear exercise of soft, hard, and sharp power. And so I want to say a couple of things on the academic front.
这个问题是在问中国通过软硬不同的手段去增强它的影响力。
I think Joshua saw recently close up and personal when he spoke at Columbia what the actions
黄之锋最近在哥伦比亚大学演讲的时候，应该也已经看到了中国大陆学生的一些反应。我想这个问题并没有一个很简单的答案，可是我想我们应该如何去实施这样一个就是我们支持欢迎中国学生来到美国学习。可是我知道有一些来自中国大陆留学生根本就不敢上我的课，因为他们感到非常的害怕，因为他们知道我是一个中国人权执行主任。近期
censorship is on mainland students as well.
我想说，这种中共的这种审查也是施加到了中国大陆留学生的身上的，所以他们也是在这样的监控之下的。
And in particular, as the Protect Hong Kong Act moves forward in discussions, and I know that it's going through a legislative process, I think it would be really good to think about and address the question of the U.S. companies, because not only will the denial of export licenses really address the issue, it will address the issue of no longer being complicit, but will it address the issue of the actual category of lethal and non-lethal materials? And I wanted to point out that China hosts the China International Exhibition on Police Equipment every 2 years. The next one, they all held in Beijing, will be held on May 12th to the 15th. That's a really important date. And they sell, and they have thousands of exhibitors from all over the world and companies. And in the past, we have been monitoring many U.S. companies have gone to exhibit and sell, and then afterwards report very proudly on the Are we singing? Not yet, right? Okay, not yet, not singing yet. But they've also reported on the millions of dollars of contracts that they were able to secure in Beijing. So I think one thought might be to, aside from or in addition to export licenses, what about technology transfer? What about collaboration? What about them training the Chinese partner companies? What are the other things that need to be in place so that, because China has been named an economic competitor for the U.S., it's not an even playing field. They're an economic competitor where the SOEs are dominating the economy. You are not investing in all your the U.S. companies, but China is investing in all the key industries, and that is technology, and AI,
各种各样的关键领域投资，如人工智能、金融、军事等领域。
So I want to ask one final thought for what can be done going forward. Next year on the Human Rights Council, at the end of this year, China rotates off, and according to the rules, can't come back on in 2020. I think that is the year in which the U.S. government, I know you have left the Council for various analyses of its effectiveness, but that does not take away the fact that the U.S. is still viewed as a leading player among all the member states in the Council. You can exercise your role as an observer. You can also exercise your very influential role in working with other democratic governments to issue joint statements, joint initiatives, and joint. So I think 2020 is particularly important, and in particular, that is the year to push, because you're also on the NGO committee of ECOSOC. That is the year to support and push for the reforms that are needed to allow independent civil society groups to be able to participate. As you know, my organization had applied for ECOSOC status, and over the last 30 years, and both times you can't make it out of the NGO committee because China just looks at us and goes, and that's it. It's end of story. So I think it's very important that the U.S. can raise the issues not only as an observer in Human Rights Council, but in the General Assembly. And I know you're quite active on the various committees. That's where I think it's really important to exercise leadership. 2020
进行更多的参与，同时也在联合国大会上能够有更多的参与。
threatening everybody else to support them while they're not there, but the point is they won't have a vote. So I think it's a good year to get some traction.
I'll just make a couple quick comments. One is U.S. has law enforcement cooperation with the Hong Kong police, and this may need to be reconsidered or looked at more strongly in the future. Second, basically as far as companies go in Hong Kong, there's a one country, two systems apartheid-like system where patriotic companies are privileged over other companies. If you happen to be a pro-democracy supporter,
在香港有这样一个情况，就是那些所谓的爱国的公司，他们会享受到更好的待遇。
If I remember my count correctly, there's 7 public ones. They're all funded by the SAR government.
香港有非常多的大的公司是接受来自中共驻港办公室的这个资金的。如果你
There's also a lot of things that happens on Hong Kong
related
to academic and other freedoms that are above the water,
在
below the water line.
学术界也有非常多的事情发生。比如香港，香港的警察现在在抗争在集会地点附近搜查人们的身份证，那么即使你可能不是抗争者，那么你的身份信息也会被录入。
I think it was around 2014 or 2012. And my last comment would be that Chinese state-owned enterprises incorporated in Hong Kong should not be treated as Hong Kong companies.
我想，还有一点就是，中国大陆的这种公司，在港的公司不应该被看作是和香港的公司一样的。
Senator King. Thank you. Ms. Holm, I'm struggling with the fact that we've got an island of democracy in a sea of repression.
我觉得我们现在在一个压迫的这样一个汪洋大海中，有一个小岛是有民主和自由的。
You've got Hong Kong. You've got two societies moving in the opposite direction.
这两个社会在向两个完全不同的方向在行驶，在前进着。
As a practical matter, as a practical matter, there's 7 million, I understand, Hong Kongers and almost.
那么香港有700万人，你认为有没有什么实际的办法
？The other piece that I wanted to ask is there any sympathy for the Hong Kongers within the mainland?
另一个我想问的问题是。中国大陆内部有没有一些同情香港的人？有没有人对于香港人这种对于言论自由的、对于民主的追求有一些同情？我想了解一下这个问题。我可能没有一个完整的答案，可是我想说。
A whole ecosystem of control through the technology.
中共政府它通过科技、通过法律，已经建立了一个完整的这种控制性的这种系统，然后让人们进行自我审查，让人们互相举报。这是一个整个的一个生态系统，这种思想控制。同时，还有这种非常不对等的权利。
Notwithstanding the mass crackdowns on lawyers, notwithstanding the torture on the mainland, notwithstanding the killing of untold thousands in 1989 of tanks, they have not, the Communist Party has not been able to shut down people.
尽管这种权利一方是人权活动人士被极力的迫害，一方是强大的中共政权，可是这么多年来，中国政权并没有成功的使这些声音真正的消失，使这些反对的声音真正的消失。
That has over 100,000 people every year on June 4th remembering. It was Hong Kong students, it was Hong Kong journalists who went up to Beijing to support the democracy movement.
1989年的时候，香港有非常多的学生和记者到北京去支持这种北京1989年这些女学生。
Can the Beijing regime tolerate Hong Kong?
北京可以容忍香港这样的行为吗？北京难道不会视香港为一种威胁吗？一方面，北京视香港为一个威胁，可是另一方面，北京也认为香港这种高度的经济繁荣是就像在像一只。
They're trying to keep half of Hong Kong denying of reality of
他们非常珍视香港的香港给他们带来这种经济上的利益。
We have had a history of working courts and independence. You can't just wipe it. Sympathy for mainlanders. I know.
关于中国大陆是否有人同情香港人的这样一个问题，我之前在香港参加过这样的活动，我曾经看到过中国大陆人在香港参与这样的。可是当这些人在香港这些中国大陆的人参加香港的抗争活动的时候，他们远在中国大陆的父母却会受到这种警察的威胁，说哦，你的儿子在香港参加了这样的活动。所以我想
and are inspired by, that's what Beijing is afraid of. They're afraid, that's why they first censor everything,
大陆人的行为同时也在激励着香港人，这才是北京最害怕的事情。中国大陆也有一些人，他们有这种可以翻墙软件来获得海外的自由信息。
For the Hong Kong democracy movement online.
也有很多人在网上支持香港的运动，可是他们却受到了监禁和迫害。
And Mr. King, they're not able to tell mainlanders who do see what they're seeing.
可是他们中共到现在为止依然没有办法去使这些反抗的声音消失，他们也没有办法让这些能够看到真实信息的大陆人改变他们的想法，因为他们也想要自由。可是香港却是在前线的，香港的抗争是在最前线。我想在这间屋子里也会有人，也会有北京来的人。我想感谢你能够说出真话这样的勇气。我们想确保北京的政府知道我们是非常珍视民主这个价值的。
I want to thank this panel for coming before this commission, providing some perspective and expertise on this important and very timely topic. As many of you know, I spent more than 5 years living in Guangzhou.
我曾经在广州住过5年，我在上世纪90年代曾经在广州居住过5年，在一家私人企业工作。
With the ongoing erosion of autonomy and human rights in the region, and I will tell you, I stand with the citizens of Hong Kong.
我见证了香港这种民主受到的逐渐的侵蚀。那么，我想说，我和香港人站在一起。
And 6 LegCo leaders who came to my home state of Montana. This event was important to better understand the situation in Hong Kong and identifying what some of the key issues were and have a very open and free exchange.
来到了我在蒙大拿州的家中，向我讲述香港的情况。
And the entire world must continue to support the
我认为
autonomy
整个世界必须继续支持香港的自治和民主。
It is one country, 2 systems. I was in Hong Kong on June 30th, 1997, and saw the Union Jack come down for the last time. The Hong Kong central government needs to work with protesters to accept the demands put forward by the citizens of the country, and the use of excessive force by the police must end immediately.
我想，警察的这种过度武力必须立刻结束。
Question, I'll start with Mr. Wong. The protesters have formed a consensus around 5 demands, including withdrawal of the extradition bill and, of course, universal suffrage. Does the government need to comply with all 5 demands immediately, or is there a phased or alternative outcome that might be acceptable?
政府是否现在就是必须立刻回应5大诉求？
since 3 decades ago, even earlier than I born.
香港人在很多年前就开始进行了追求普选的这种抗争，在我出生之前就已经开始了。我们的5大诉求也是在现有的这种法律条框之下的。
Especially with the quote of Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong.
北京也是对做出了这种港人自治的承诺的。我想我们的抗争将会继续进行。
So I would say that now we have continued our summer of discontent and becoming the year of discontent.
我想说，我们现在夏季的这种抗争之下，已经进入了抗争之年。
Let me, if I could, interject. Thank you. I've got a vote coming. I've got to get to. I'm probably going to get there quickly. But a follow-up question: how do you expect Chief Executive Carrie Lam?
你认为香港特首林郑月娥将如何回应这样的诉求？她又有多大的权利？还是说北京有最终的决定权？我认为林郑月娥只是北京政府的一个傀儡。我们现在已经意识到，是否撤回条例，是否停止警方暴力，这些所有的一切都取决于北京，而不是林郑月娥。他只是在听命于北京。北京过去一直在开这样的官方新闻发布会去谴责香港的抗争者，我觉得这已经说明了北京在这个问题上的权利。
Thank you very much. Yes. And I think Mr. Smith has one additional question.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I do appreciate it. If I could, and Ms. Hom, you did mention it, so and I think it bears a little further scrutiny. One of the notions of there's no such thing as a free lunch, in my opinion, applies with on steroids to the issue of Confucius centers, which are just agents of influence.
我想提一下孔子学院这个问题，就是他们在海外不停地推动北京的这种。
As well as on those entities, universities, colleges that get access to the mainland China especially, and get an enormous number of perks, money, physical plant venues for their colleges or universities,
有非常多的美国大学，包括纽约大学在内。
One of my hearings, and asked that I could go and speak, and he allowed me to come and give a speech or a lecture on human rights in Shanghai at the NYU campus. But the concern is that there are en route to 1,000 or something like that globally, that is to say the Chinese government with these Confucius centers. We have 96 in the United States, 82 are public, 14 are private.
孔子学院在美国有90多家，他们每年都招入几千名学生。
And that is look at the terms and conditions, which really is mostly secret.
他们很多的这种与美国高校签订的条款都非常的秘密，然后他们自己挑选北京。可是他们的教材中却有非常多的他们共产党的一些价值观。
About what's going on in Hong Kong right now, and those universities and colleges, U.S.-based, that are in China today, what are they able to say and do without fear of retaliation?
美国在中国设置的这样一些学校中，他们这样的美国高校，他们能在香港这种事情中能起到什么样的作用？比如NYU 在中国的上海设有分校。
Start off. Thank you. I think it's important also to note that the Confucius Institutes and the pushbacks have also been led by really active, wonderful activism by Students for Free Tibet and the Tibetan community supported by the Uyghurs. And I think they've had some really good victories that show you really can push back and get the institutions to be more accountable and
在推动的。
The quick answer to what are they saying is what can they say will always be under the guideline right now. Under
在中国的这个美国的高校，他们在能说什么？
Where every single party non-member has to participate in political study. That the line of the day, what can be reported in Xinhua, what can be reported in the news, everything will be determined from the top. And if you say anything, and as you know, under the new regulations, under the Cybersecurity Act for the news is defined very broadly to include opinion, a commentary, including blogging, including so you can't say, blog, think anything except what the line comes down.
现在新闻定义已经扩大为包括评论，包括博客。
Backed up by black hands, led by the U.S. Interfering in domestic an affair and violating China's sovereignty. This is the same old chestnut we all hear over and over, and they got to get a better story here. But that's what they keep saying, and so I think that is now the dominant what anyone can say. Because if you say anything against that, for example, you have a different idea. Not only are you violating the new news regulations, you're also running the risk of subversion.
所以就是，如果中国人他不光是在新闻里面，他甚至如果是在博客上发表一些支持香港或者是一些反对中共的言论，那么他也有可能面对这种审查和迫害。
My friends and colleagues say to the U.S., "Please save us."
我在香港的一些朋友一直在对我说啊，美国希望美国能够能够拯救我们。可是，
Please help make the human cost less, because it's very clear and heartbreaking.
全世界的人都应该去帮助香港减少他们这种抗争的损失。我想美国政府和这个委员会能做的就是尽量的减少这样的损失。
So this is like going inside of a black box, but let me speculate. I am pretty sure that all the curricula are approved and reviewed. I'm pretty sure they don't exercise academic freedom and say, "Here's the creative thing."
我想说，那么在中国的这些美国大学，他们的课程表一定都是经过审查、经过中共当局批准的。
You will know, yeah, there are just big holes in that history. What's happening, and all of the you'll probably read about the diverse ethnic groups in China. Happy people, happy Tibetans, happy Uyghurs. You know, you'll probably see that version of what is happening. So I'm pretty sure. The other thing is, if those institutes are also monitored. So if anyone says anything that actually challenges the dominant narrative, I'm pretty sure that teacher will be in trouble. So I think it's pretty tightly controlled, and money is the
这样的学校应该也是不会允许的。
to universities, and I think not only just for the Confucius Institutes, they sometimes come along with other really good goods like an endowed chair, like money for a chair, like money for a program. So I think there's this kind of
中共在海外的这种意识形态输出，除了孔子学院之外，他们有的时候还会给一些机构、一些委员会一些资助。
As somebody who loves Hong Kong. And personally and professionally, and as a member of the from the private sector, I think we need to also remember that every single SOE, state-owned enterprise, has a party committee, and now that requirement has extended to companies with foreign investments and foreign companies. I had a Canadian company ask me, "How could that be? Why are they making us establish a party committee?" I said, "You're not being targeted."
有一家在加拿大在中国的公司问我说，我们为什么要被要求建立一个党支部？我说，他们并不是在针对你，而是所有的公司都要建立一个党支部。
Look at the
这
annual
并不是
reports
一
of
个秘
China
密。
Telecom, China Mobile. They have pictures of the annual meeting of the party committee saying, we did good. The party committee's happy with us this year. We complied. So I think the American companies going in,
我想，那
there
么美国
are
的公司
listed
进入
SOEs. I
中
think
国，
Apple Daily reported over 120 that are listed, 120 Chinese companies listed on the Hong Kong Exchange. They all have party committees within their
那么
management
我知道，
structure.
苹果日
So
报
I
已
think
经
we
报
need to
道，就
look
是
at that when you're
有
looking at
120家
these
美
other
国
actors.
在上海上市的公
That's
司
for you, Senator，
他们都有党
Thank
直
you
播
very。much. You've been very patient. You've been here for 2.5 hours. I'm the last person, so you have to bear with me just a little bit more. But this is this hearing is winding down. First of all, let me thank everybody for being here. I mean, everybody's testimony has been, I think, informative and
我想，每个
has
人的
given
发
us some
言
marching
都有
orders,
非
and I
常多的
appreciate
信
your
息，给了我
responses
们
to
非常
the
多的
questions.
信息和帮助。
You know, Congressman Smith, earlier on in the hearing, referenced kind of the past inactions by the U.S. government in response to human rights
刚才史密
abuses
斯
in
议员
China,
他
and
讨论了美
we've
国
kind of looked the
政
other
府
way,
过
or we
去
thought more trade
在
would
中国
do
问
it,
题上的
or
态度。
more this would do it, or whatever. Really, things haven't got any better. Things are continue to get worse. And I think it's fair to say that, for the most part, the U.S. government has been very good at kind of talking the talk. You know, when it
我
comes to
想说，
Tibet, we
那么
issue the
过
obligatory
去我们
statement that
在
we respect the rights of the Tibetan people to practice their religion, and we respect His Holiness the Dalai
美国
Lama.
美国
But
政府在
the
语言
repression
上
continues, and
做的还
there's no
是比较
consequence.
好的。我们在
And I think
在
part of
语
what
言上
we're
去
trying to do
支
is
持
change
西
that.
藏人，
You know, just talk in and of itself doesn't end
可
up
是
changing anything.
语
There
言
needs to be
上
a
并不
consequence.
能
And
够
so we're trying
真
to
正的有所
move legislation forward that
对
would
形
impose
势
that
有所改变，
consequence.
所以我们现在
And I think
提
it
出的
is
这
very
些
clear
法
from
案，
everybody here
希
that
望能够就
Protect
是
Hong
真正的
Kong
有
Act
所
and the
行
Hong
动，
Kong
能够
Human
真正的
Rights
产
and
生一定的
Democracy
效
Act are
果。
important items for us to pass in the House and Senate. And I believe, and I can probably give you an assurance that we will do that.
我
I
相
mean,
信我们是
it
会这
doesn't
样做
happen
的。
here overnight. Senator Rubio talked about hearings that are happening in the Senate. We have assurances from the relevant committees in the House that they will move on this.
我
And I
们
believe
也
they will
得到
come
了
to the
来
House
自
floor, they will come to the Senate floor, and they will receive
来
bipartisan
自国
support.
会其他议员的保
And
障，
so
他们会
that
支
will
持
happen.
这
So
项法案，所以
we
我认
get
为
the message on that, and that is, and we will follow through. So we have our assignments. Mr. Wong and Ms. Ho and Mr. Zhang, you've traveled, along with some of your colleagues who are behind you, and I want to recognize them as well, have
我想
traveled
感谢
a
黄志
long
峰
way
何韵诗
at a
你
very
们
critical time
从
in
这么
Hong
远的地
Kong.
方来，以及你们
And
背后
you've
你
come
们
here
的
to
这些
build
同事从这么远的
international
地方来
support for Hong Kong. And
来
I think
呼
it'd
吁
be
国际社会对香
important
港的支持
for the。record for you to say, you know, why it is so important that the
我觉得
international community and the United States support
国际
your
社会
efforts, why
和
that is critical to the success in what you are doing. And I also would like to get everybody's response to this, and that is,
同时，我也想知道所有
you know,
人
I-
对
you know,
这
I
一点
have
的
to
反应。
be honest with you, I've been somewhat disappointed in the current our administration's response.
老实说，
to
目
what
前
is,
为止，我
happening
并不
in
满
Hong
意
Kong.
美国
I think
政
it should be
府
much more
对
forceful,
于
and I would
香港
appreciate
的
your
做法。我
comments
认为
on
对于香港问
advice
题
that
的
you
这
would
种
give
处
the
理
Trump
态度，我认为我们可以更加
administration
强
on
硬一些。
what they should be saying when dealing with the Chinese government.
我想
And we
知
could
道
begin
你们认
why
为
we begin
美国
with
政
Dr.
府
Garrett,
现在可以
if
做
we're
的
going-
有哪
I'll
些
end？ with Mr. Wong.
应该做的是哪些？
Well, speaking to the what advice we could give the Trump administration,
那么我们对川普政府有哪些建议
I？would say that
我想说，
U.S. responses have to be resolute, to use the Hong Kong
美
term.
国的态度必须非
If
常
they're
的
not
坚
hard,
决。如果我
if
们
they're
不
not
强
unwavering,
硬，如果
you
我
will not
们
get any
动摇，
respect
那么你
from Xi
将
Jinping's Communist
不会
Party.
得到来自
They
习
will
近平
exploit it.
和共产党的任何回
They-
应。他们
The
会
strongman aesthetic is what rules Beijing right now, and even in Hong Kong and Tamar. So this deal making doesn't really mean much to them
这
because
种
whatever deal that they make
协议对于北京来说，协议并不奏效，因为你无论与他们达成了怎样的协议，他们都将不去遵守这种协议。
We call it party speak, and I think the administration has to be aware of this party speak and understand it.
我认为，当下政府应该更加理解中共的这种。
This is the first ideological confrontation of the new Cold War. Whether or not you agree it's a Cold War or not, the discussions have been out there.
这是现在是一场意识形态的战争，也是一种新的冷战。今天坐在这里的这些见证人，他们想要拯救香港的自治，想要拯救香港的体系。可是，在北京，在香港的一些地区，他们试图将这种一国两制武器作为一种武器来攻击美国。将这种体系军事化，是中共试图在利用香港的这种经济上的优惠待遇，在利用全球其他的国家。他们现在也在推广“一带一路”政策，“一带一路”的项目。
That was done through a whole series of deceptions and manipulations of Hong Kong's special status. And these types of things are still going on today.
这种也是完全是在欺骗世界人民，同时也在利用香港的这种优惠、经济上的优惠、贸易上的优惠待遇。
And anybody affiliated with the CPPCC or the NPC differently than how we would treat regular Hong Kongers. Thank you.
Ms. Horn.
I really think that's a scary thought to give advice to Trump or the administration, but I think that any actions by the administration has to hold true to the U.S.'s core values. The U.S. has core values on human rights and democracy.
所有的政策都应该反映美国的这种核心价值。那么，美国对于人权来说是有核心价值的，是保护人权的。
The ideological confrontation
这种意识形态的冲突
is actually much more than that. It's really China against the world. It's not two models of equal legitimacy.
其实是一个很大的问题，而是其实是中共与全世界的这种对抗。
It's the model that the international community, with Eleanor Roosevelt, in fact, playing a very key role in the Universal Declaration. You know, it was a world order that came out to say we will never again have what happened in Nazi Germany. We will never again have mass detentions.
二战结束后，
we will never have mass trampling on human dignity.
全世界似乎是签署了这样一个约定，就是我们再也不要让发生在纳粹德国的事情再一次发生。可是现在又有了中国共产党的这种模式，所以我想说，这场冲突其实是中共和这个全世界的这种抗争这种冲突。我想中共应该面临更多的后果。当美国站起来发言的时候，这些话我相信北京现在我相信北京现在就有人在听我们在说这些话。我们现在的直播应该北京的当局政府也在看。中共这个政府它是想要一个政权的合法性的。如果没有合法性，这个政权就没有办法继续执政。
Thank you. Mr. Jung?
所以我觉得美国政府需要指出，我们不会给你的政权这样的合法性，因为你现在的行为就像暴徒一样。
China is picking up all the fights with other countries in the free world. China is expanding their military in the South China Sea.
中共在南海扩张他们的军事势力。
They have the ownership of the South China Sea, which severely threatens the security in the Asia Pacific region.
对于亚太地区的安全来讲有非常大的威胁。
Regarding the Huawei incident, and
那么包括在香港的华为案件。
Only China, I think, and this is unreasonable, and that explains how assertive China is, and that's why I believe only the American, you are the only superpower that can really try to.
我想美国是这个世界上唯一一个能够去挑战中国的这样一个国家。
Silence invasion. I use the wording according to the Professor Hamilton in Australia. They are using a very silent invasion, using their economic dominance.
中国现在通过经济上的这种主导，在全世界实施他们的所谓像这种殖民一般的政策。
Some East Asian countries and like the country like Sri Lanka, they have to lease a military port to China for 99 years. And apparently this is a new imperialism for me, and I believe only U.S. can contain China. And also, secondly, I believe why U.S. should be concerned about Hong Kong is that you have many interests in here, and you have to secure your interests. For example,
因为美国在香港有非常多的利益，那么你们应该去保护这些利益。
U.S. sanction that Hong Kong should not allow a ship which carrying the oil from the Iran. And the point is that Hong Kong government, they ignore the U.S. sanction, and they allow the ship from the Iran to come to Hong Kong and try to carrying those oils back to Iran. And apparently this undermines your interest, and that's why this is one of the most important reasons you should care about Hong Kong, and you should do something instead of just maybe
和伊朗进行这种交易的一种工具。那么美国应该停止这样的行为。
This historic fight in Hong Kong has only been possible with the determination of the youngsters and of the Hong Kong people.
香港人之所以能够继续这场历史性的抗争，当然他们的动力是非常一大部分是来自于年轻人的这种坚持。
The continuous attention on Hong Kong issues, and of course to the push of this act, because this has contributed in giving hope.
我认为这些美国的这种关注和对这种法案的推进，其实是在给香港人希望，是在告诉香港的年轻人，你们其实正在改变着世界。这其实真的是一个全球性的这种冲突，是我们对普世价值的一种保护。
We would be seeing a momentum in the international communities.
我们希望这种法案，如果这两个法案如果通过的话，那么其他的国家也许会提出更多的类似的法案去保护香港。
Actually destroying these values on a daily basis. So thank you very much.
Mr. Wong.
With the sharp power expansion from China to Canada and Australia, the Belt and Road Initiative
中共对加拿大和澳洲的这种渗透，以及他们通过“一带一路”的这个项目对其他国家的这种渗透。
After entering WTO, after promise on joint declaration, and even having the negotiation with U.S. on the trade deal, we all are aware the uprising China model is just the expansion of authoritarian rule and without any
扩张的中国模式是对全球民主价值的一种挑战。香港人是站在最前线，在挑战的这种专制的集权。如果香港倒下的话，那么接下来下一个倒下的可能就是整个的这个自由世界。
And also, I hope U.S. government
我
to
希望
reveal its
国会
foreign
能够
policy
通过
to
香港
China
人权
to prioritize
人权
human
与
rights
民主法
issue.
案。
Especially now, we are not only suffering in the political, but even humanitarian crisis.
现在我们不仅
The
是
first
在
time for
经历
me
一
to
场
be in
政治危
prison
机，也是
is
在
2
经历
years
一场
ago.
人
I
道主义
remember
危机。
I watched TV news on
2
how
年前
Beijing authorities announced the
我
no
看电
term
视的
limit
时候
for president in the
看到了
future, which just let me realize that when I was in
北京当
prison
局
and the one who locked me up in prison, which means the authoritarian rule represented by President Xi, will be the Emperor Xi. So that's
我
the
当时看到了
uphill
北
and
京当局
long-term
无限期的
battle.
延长了
And
这
in
个中共主席的这个任期
no matter
那么
me
我就意识
or
到
Sunny or others will be at
将
the
我
age
关
of
进监狱里
50.
面
And
的
I
这
hope
个习近平，他
after
现在已经
28
成为了
years,
几乎
Hong
是一
Kong
个
can
君主
still
一样
be
的
our
这样的
hometown
角色。
with freedom and democracy. And I think it's the time to thank all the congressmen and senators in the past few years and even in the past few decades, really paying attention to
我
protest
现在
movement in
想
Hong
要
Kong.
借这个
We
机会
stand in
感谢
solidarity.
那些
We
在
stand
过
as
去
one.
几个月，在
Hong
过去
Kongers
几年中
never
一直
walk alone.
关切
Thank
着
you.
香港形势
Thank you very
的
much.
美国的议员们。
Let me thank the staff of the Commission for all the work that they did in preparing this hearing. Let me thank, again, the panelists. And to our friends from Hong Kong, let me thank you
我想感谢
for
所
your
有为
courage
准
and
备这场
commitment.
听证
I mean,
会
I
做
think
出
what is
努力的工
prompting
作人
action
员。
here in the Congress is, your courage that we see unfolding on our television screens and we read about in the newspapers. I have to tell you, I think for everybody here,
我想今天在场的所有人，你们都激励着我。
we're a diverse political group.
我们今天有一个非常多元化的这个政治组成。可是我们一起和香港人站在一起。
I can't thank you enough for being here. So, thank you, and this hearing is adjourned.